Alongside Brian Wilson back in Washington.
And joining us on the line right now is Senator Tim Kaine, Democrat for Virginia, and a person who's been out on the stump for Hillary Clinton. Good morning, Senator. How are you?
Hey, guys. I'm doing great. We just got back from New Hampshire over the weekend, and it's good to be back in Washington. Excited to see the results tonight.
All right, so we're all excited to see the results. So, I mean, look, if you look at the polls, it's a heavy lift for Hillary to come in first.
Indeed.
Most people aren't expecting that she will come in first in New Hampshire. So what is a victory for Hillary Clinton tonight?
You know, our feeling before Iowa was this, that two of Bernie's best three states, of the entire 50 states for Democrats, two of his three best states were the first two states, Iowa and New Hampshire. The third is Vermont, obviously, where he's from. And so we felt like if we can come out of the first two states 1-1, then we're going to feel good about that, and then we're going to move on and, get to the other states, and especially the big Super Tuesday where Virginia is on March 1. So I think it would be a very uphill climb for Hillary to go 2-0 in the first two states and win tonight. I think Bernie is likely to win, but I also think, based on my stumping around on New Hampshire and talking to folks and listening to the radio and watching the TV ads, I suspect that she'll probably do better than some of the polls were suggesting. So that's my sense, and I've done the stumping, and I've got my pitch down, because the real focus for me is going to be with respect to Virginia on March 1, and I think Virginia will be a really important part of this nominating process on both sides.
Senator Kaine, you represent Virginia, obviously, in the U.S. Senate. You know Virginians well. There are a lot of proud members of the military and the intelligence community who are your constituents, and we hear from them often about Hillary Clinton's lack of judgment in using a non-government, unsecured email server when she was Secretary of State, a server that we now know contained classified and top-secret information, probably, based on many experts' opinion, now in the hands of our foreign enemies. So I ask you, with them in mind, with your constituents in mind who take these issues very seriously in the military and the intelligence community, does it not give you pause that she used that kind of lack of judgment as Secretary of State?
Well, let me say this. I'm a member of the Armed Services Committee, and I got a child in the military, and so these are not issues that are foreign to me. They matter very, very deeply to me. It matters deeply to me, for example, that the leading candidate on the Republican side, Donald Trump, in a speech in a South Carolina debate said, quote, "The American military is a disaster." Somebody who's running for commander-in-chief.
Senator Kaine, you're going to have plenty of time to beat up on the Republicans.
But on the Hillary point. So here's what the facts are thus far. She had a server in her home, just like other secretaries of state, including General Colin Powell did.
Wait, they didn't have private. Wait. I'm sorry for interrupting you. They did not have private servers in their homes.
Let me continue. The indication last week was this is very similar to arrangements that other secretaries of state had. She turned over 55,000 pages that had been poured through, and there were 21 emails that were designated, that contained material that was designated classified or top secret. The emails were part of 7 email exchanges where she didn't initiate them. Somebody sent something to her and included within the email classified material that they didn't designate, as they're supposed to under State Department rules, as classified. So yes, on 7 occasions, somebody sent her classified material mistakenly, not designating it as classified, and then she hit reply or forwarded it on. Now, she said, looking backwards, I wish I'd done it differently. I didn't do really anything that differently than previous secretaries of state have, but I've learned a lesson, and I would do it differently, and I credit her with that. But the scope of it is really not different.
May I please follow up?
Secretaries of state. Sure, absolutely.
Because first of all, I have seen nothing that suggests that Colin Powell had his own home-brewed private server. And in fact, Colin Powell says that there are 2 emails at question, and he questions very seriously whether or not they should be classified the way that apparently some have classified them.
I think Secretary Clinton said the same thing about them.
Well,
the material wasn't designated as classified when she received it.
But we're talking 2 emails. We're talking instead of a whole host, and including some information that apparently some information was the most sensitive information that apparently we have in our intelligence community.
Well, I'm not sure about that. Colin Powell said he was the recipient of 2 emails. The Hillary story is ultimately about 7 emails that somebody sent to her with material that was classified, but they didn't designate it as classified, so she would have no way of knowing it was classified. And then she, forwarded or replied And so off of these 7 emails, there were a total of 21 emails out of the 55,000 pages she's turned over. Now, you're right. She has said, hey, looking backwards, I'd do it differently. And I credit her at that. And I think current and future secretaries of state will do it differently.
Oh, for sure.
But it was not out of character with what had been done. You asked the question about what do military folks think. Well,
Yeah.
there was a Secretary of State who was one of America's best military folks who had an arrangement that wasn't that different.
Senator Kaine, one other question on a different topic relating to Secretary Clinton. Just 2 weeks ago, here in New Hampshire, she has promised to, as president, overturn the Hyde Amendment. As you know, the Hyde Amendment precludes federal tax dollars to pay for abortions. Your candidate wants to upend that. She wants federal tax dollars to go to pay for abortions. Now, people can have respectful positions on the choice issue, on the pro-life issue, but why should all of our tax dollars, if we are adamantly pro-life and respect the life of an unborn child, why should my tax dollars go to pay for someone's abortion? Do you agree with that?
Well, first, I support the Hyde Amendment, and so I can't really comment because I haven't seen any news coverage of her discussing the Hyde Amendment.
Yeah, they haven't covered it much, but she did.
Well, but if your question is, do I support the Hyde Amendment? Yeah, I do support the Hyde Amendment.
All right. I think you should look into that because the candidate that you are supporting does not support the Hyde Amendment. She wants to call to abandon it.
I hope you guys agree with me that nobody should be commander-in-chief who says the American military is a disaster. We ought to have a commander-in-chief who, when they talk about the military, talk about it with respect and gratitude, not contempt and disrespect.
We share your respect for the military, definitely,
Yes,
Senator Kaine. Thank you for joining us.
Okay,
Senator
guys,
Kaine, thank
great being with you.
Appreciate it. 744.